Welcome to the Joy Work Show, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of business, exploring the joy, the grit, and the stories behind success, not just the moments of celebration that paved the way to them. Hiya, I'm Diane, and here we know that joy isn't just about the good times, it often shines brightest after the toughest moments. Each week, we bring you real stories from business owners who reveal the triumphs, transformations, and truths behind their journey. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Nikki Masson, a business growth coach for female founders who's on a mission to empower women to build impactful, sustainable businesses. Nikki shares her journey from navigating the identity shift that comes with motherhood to finding her calling as a coach and helping others create growth on their own terms. A woman after my heart. In this episode, we talk about the internal struggles female entrepreneurs face and how to overcome them, why resilience and personal development are non-negotiables in business, and the importance of community in cutting through the noise of online culture. And as always, Nikki brings her own little show and tell, letting us know about her joy spotlight and her joy killers. So if you've ever questioned your path or felt overwhelmed by the weight of building a business, then this is one for you. Get ready to be inspired to live life on your own terms while making the impact you've always dreamed of. And as always, it is so much better to hear it in their words. So let's go. Hi, Nikki, and welcome to the Joy Work Show. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I am delighted that you are here. And I know a little bit about your story. We have had a conversation before, but I cannot wait for the listeners to get to know you, know your story and what you're about, because it is truly inspiring. So, Nikki, let us know who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Hello. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. As I say, I'm so delighted that you are here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here too. So I'm Nikki Masson. I'm a business growth coach for female founders. And I help women in business to create impactful and sustainable business growth, but without the burnout. So I'm very much about finding better ways of working, so that it gives you time freedom, it gives you flexibility, but you're still able to create the impact. You're still able to do the good things in the world that you really want to create personally and with your business as well. So that's kind of what I do. And I started my business, well, I actually certified as a coach in 2017. But prior to that, I'd had another business which I started when my boys went on, when my first baby was born. Because I got to that stage where, as a mum, and I'm sure lots of your listeners are mums, where you just kind of, like, for me personally, I felt like I lost a bit of myself when I became a parent. And I've always been quite ambitious. I've always sort of had quite a drive and wanted to do things. So I got to that point on maternity leave where I was like, okay, I'm getting itchy feet here. Like, what can I do? And I wanted to do something as well as going back to work. So I set up a business, and I was doing that part-time. And then I had my second baby. I actually got made redundant about probably 10 days-ish before I was due to go back. I actually took the redundancy, but it wasn't like they really gave me any choice, because they told me I could apply for this new role, but the role was like full-time hours, like working every day, and it was just not what I wanted to do. So I took redundancy, and actually it was probably the best thing that ever happened, because it was kind of that, right, I'm going to go all in with my business now. I'm going to make this a real success. However, it wasn't quite the success that I imagined it to be. That business was a product-based business, and it was in network marketing. And I had all of these goals and aspirations of what I was going to achieve. I saw people doing these amazing things. I went to company events, and I was motivated by seeing people on the stage talking about how much they were earning. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. However, when it came to actually doing the work, I found it a lot harder than I thought it would. So, for example, for me, I found it really hard to talk to people about what I was doing. It was just trying to show up and be the face of your business, or my business, I found really, really difficult. And I didn't really realize at the time, but I had quite a lot of like fear of rejection, fear of criticism. So lots of fears and doubts were coming up for me. And so really that first business was more of an expensive hobby than anything else. Like I'm
Yeah.
sure I put far much more money into it than I ever made. But what it did do for me is it got me on that journey of personal development. Like I'd worked all my life from the age of 16, but I'd never come across personal development before. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'd worked in corporate businesses and obviously done like company trainings and stuff and developed myself within the roles I was working in, but it was never about me. It was always about the company's goals and agenda, which is fine.
Yep.
But then I worked for myself and I was like, suddenly opened up this whole new world of personal development. I was like, wow, like I can work on myself. I can like improve my life. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And I'd got introduced, I'd actually gone to a masterclass with one of my business mentors. Well, he wasn't my mentor at the time, but he turned out that he ended up being my mentor. And on that masterclass, he started to talk about how our mind works and how we think, feel, and behave today is attributed to things that have happened in our past.
Yeah.
So then I was starting to connect the dots and I was like, hang on a minute, I'm not getting the results I want. Could that actually be down to something that happened years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been through lots of events, like lots of mental and emotional trauma, and it suddenly things were clicking into place and it just set the wheels in motion for me then to explore like human behavior, for me to start to understand how like I was working or could work. And then I went on my own path again into self-development, got my own coach, went through my own transformation, and the rest is kind of history really, because then I got the opportunity to train to become a coach. And like it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's one of those moments where you know when you realize this is what I'm now meant to be doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And it was very much a case of, right, if I can have this transformation, if I can change my life, because I'd gone from a place of being really depressed, suffering from really severe anxiety. Like I didn't have any belief, I didn't have any confidence in myself. I felt like a shell of myself, literally at that point. And I thought, you know what, if I can turn things around, then maybe other people could do that too. And it
Yeah.
was very much at the time, the focus is it doesn't matter what's happened in the past, your past doesn't define you. It's all about what do you want to create now and for your future. And that was really that catalyst for me to become a coach and do the work that I do now.
I love that. There's one part of the conversation that I want to start with, and it's a conversation that actually I had with a previous podcast guest that I've recorded earlier today. But it's a conversation that keeps coming up in the podcast particularly when I'm speaking to female founders and female business owners, is quite often the catalyst for us as children, is having the baby, having the babies, having the children. And although, like you say, you took voluntary redundancy, you probably didn't feel that you had much choice. I started my business last September after my second maternity leave was coming to an end because I simply couldn't see how my previous life worked. And like you, I had ambitions. I had things I still wanted to do. I wanted my girls to see that life can be multifaceted and multi-layered and you can do lots and lots of things. Do you see it often with you specifically working with female founders? Do you see this as a repetition that is happening? And before you answer that, I'm thinking about it in two ways. I'm thinking about it from the positive aspect of it's this catalyst, it's this challenging time in our lives that we then make a choice to do something better and have a better life, but also from the point that society kind of forces our hand on this, and that for us to have not balance, because I don't really believe balance exists, but to have a life that works for a family, somebody within the family unit needs to create this flexible space. So that's my two angles from it. Do you see this something that keeps coming up?
100%. I would say that probably 99% of the women that I work with have been through that same process of having a career, then they've had a family, and then they've made a different choice. They've become an entrepreneur. They've stepped into the world of business. And it is twofold. It is that sense of, right, I can't do what I used to do because it just doesn't work. I remember when I went back to work part-time after having my first baby, the dread of having to say to my boss, the nursery's just called me and my son's ill. And having to leave, like the guilt and the dread, I was made to feel so small because I would have to go pick him up from nursery because he wasn't very well. And it was just, things like that, really. And it's like, I didn't ask to do that. I didn't want to be in that position. I wanted to do my job, but I obviously really wanted to be a mum as well. So I think that, we just can't sustain roles that we used to do and have that lifestyle and be there for our family. Like, it's just not practical. So I think that what happens is a lot of women suddenly get to the stage where they have their children and they think, well, I can't do that. So what can I do? And they're looking for the alternatives. But also, I very much think that when you have a family, it does make you see things in a completely different way. You suddenly start to think, do you know what? There is something that I've always wanted to do. Like, I don't want to be working for somebody else anymore. Like, I could design my future the way that I want it. And what if I could have it all? What if I can be there for my family, do the school runs, be present whenever they need me, but still be really successful as well? And it is possible to have it all. So yes, I think it is twofold. It's driven from a necessity of not being able to sustain what we once could. But then also getting to that stage in our life where we're like, no, there's more to this life. There's more that I'm here to create. There's more impact that I can do. And I remember, if I compare myself now to when I was at work, I couldn't create the impact in the world that I'm having now. I was obviously turning up and doing a great job and getting paid well for it, but I wasn't creating an impact. I wasn't really doing that much good in the world, but I can do that now. And that's the difference. And I think it's just amazing that we have that opportunity as women to show up in the world how we do now and lead the way.
And it is, and it has to be seen as an opportunity. And yes, there's a whole conversation about the government and the way in society and the discourse about women to be said, but also as women, we can acknowledge that that's there, but we can also see the opportunities that we have. And when it was my choice, because people always say to me, how did you know to jump at that point? Well, one, I couldn't see another point in my life where I'd be given that kind of fork in the road to decide, well, I can go back and I can keep doing that. But actually, now that my children are here, how would I then get back off of that path once I was back on it? Because then life takes over and there's nursery and school, and when would then be another time? Or I can jump now whilst we've survived 2 maternity leaves back to back pretty much. And this is where we are in the world. And it was scarier for me to stay and go back onto that path than it was to jump and just to find out, because I wanted so much for my family and I knew the past life couldn't give my family all of that. Now, you mentioned impact. So is that a really, really important thing for you? That obviously you want financial success. I know that you are money driven and success driven from that, and I know that would be a big part of your goals. But is impact up there with it for you?
Change, like helping people to change, but changing the world, like, which I know sounds like big, like that's a big mission, but like I really do, like I'm here to create an impact, to create change, to help people live better lives, to help people overcome things that have perhaps been holding them back, to help people see that like they can live the life that they want. Like the only limitations they're placing on themselves are their own limitations. I think it's really interesting that a lot of people that go into working for themselves and becoming an entrepreneur, when you ask them the question of like, would you ever go back to being employed? Most people are like, I'm unemployable now.
Massively.
Because they've changed their lives beyond recognition. It's on their terms now. And yeah, so for me, being impact driven is really, really important. And yes, like you've touched on like financial goals, and that is also important, but there's nothing more rewarding rewarding than creating an impact, as far as I am concerned.
Mm-hmm. When you think about what it takes for people to be successful, what it takes, what it shapes people, what elements of personalities or how they are as a person, something that keeps coming up for me in this podcast is that people have gone through something significant or something traumatic. And we only need to listen to some of the great podcasts and some of the great business stories to know that it is when people have come up against difficult times within their lives that then comes the greatest success. Now, you touched on the trauma and things within your life and you realizing that that was having an impact on how you were showing up. Now that you've dealt with some of that, do you agree that that resilience, that grit from that trauma kind of shapes the success that maybe you're having now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it all shapes who you are as a person. And, it's life experience and it's also shared experiences. So even though you've not necessarily been through the same as I have, or haven't necessarily been through the same as you, we all have struggles. We've all experienced struggle. And in fact, there's never a success story without a struggle. Exactly like what you've just said, you don't hear of anybody that has achieved level of success without them having gone through something, gone through a struggle. Like it's not all unicorns and rainbows, it's not plain sailing. But I definitely believe that your past is, it doesn't define you. It shapes who you are, but it doesn't have to define you. And I think if you can be somebody that goes, do you know what, I recognize that there's something here that's potentially holding me back, I need to work through some stuff, but then you can come out of that the other side, you are going to be so much stronger for that. And it's going to give you the drive, the determination, the grit to keep going for the things that you want and improve your life, because you've been through that trauma.
Yeah.
You know what it's like to maybe hit rock bottom. And it gives you even more drive to go, yeah, I'm turning this around. I'm not going to settle for that. Like, my future can be different.
Yeah, and that's exactly why, look, it's called the Joy Work Show. You know that I've got community membership with Joy Work Club, Joy Work Members Club. But the reason that I have joy in there, I'm not naturally, like, my friends don't know me as Little Miss Joy. I'm not Little Miss Sunshine in the slightest, probably the opposite. But for me, joy is that grit, that resilience, that ability to say, this is happening to me, this is difficult, this is hard, but look at what could come out of it. Look at what I do have around me. That gratitude, that element to be able to see the joy in every day, whether it's a cup of coffee in the morning or a walk outside, or I have a roof over my head and I have food in the fridge. And as long as I have that, I'll be absolutely fine type mentality, that even when the really traumatic things happen in your life, and when you look at the stories of successful entrepreneurs and business people, is they have that ability. They have that ability to take the knocks, take the no's, and the resilience to say, like, well, actually, I still really believe in what I'm doing. So thanks very much. I'm just going to go to the next person and the next person after that, and just keep going and keep going and keep going. And, it's just really interesting that there is this thing that successful entrepreneurs will talk about this trauma in their lives, but it never, ever holds them back. Never holds them back. When you're working with female founders, is there recurrent themes that you see people, particularly because they're female founders, struggling with time and time again?
So a lot of it is internal. So a lot of it is around the fears and the doubts that we have about ourselves. And some of that could have been, years of conditioning that we've carried, these beliefs, that have been maybe passed down through generations, and we're carrying them into our sort of adult life. So a lot of it's fears and doubts. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that shows up for us as business owners, because being a business owner and an entrepreneur is a very different beast to when you're self-employed. So for the people that have made the transition from being employed to suddenly being on their own, that is like, it's a big difference. You suddenly have to learn everything. Everything's on your shoulders. And then just having to put yourself out there and showing up and representing yourself can often cause a lot of imposter syndrome. And that the big one is procrastination. So you don't have a boss. You don't have anybody going, right, I need this piece of work done by 5 p.m. today, hand it in on my desk. there's nobody there going, right, I need you to do this thing. So it's very easy for ourselves to let ourselves off the hook. You know, we can scroll through social media, we can go and sit on the sofa and watch Netflix all day to avoid the things that we know we need to be doing.
Yep.
So a lot of it are these internal struggles, and we all have them, by the way. Like, it's okay, you know, you're normal if you have them. But what we've got to get really good at is recognizing that they're there and then working through them, because it's one thing to know they're there, but don't ignore them, because that's when they start to hold you back. So a lot of it is around those internal struggles, the mindset things that come up for us, the things like those fears and the doubts. And there are multiple different types of fears, lots of different types of fears, everything from the fear of criticism to the fear of failure or fear of success, doubts, procrastination. It's all kind of linked in together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think really mindset is the biggest thing that kind of impacts us and gets in our way, because we're so good as humans of talking ourselves out of things.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of put a ceiling on ourselves and our capability. And in business, what you have to be able to do is you need to lead first. You need to be able to take big, bold action, even when there's no guarantee of the result. Like, you have to, because no one's going to come along and give you permission. No one's going to go, right, you know enough now to go and launch that offer. Or you can go and get your next client, you know, you're good enough. Like, no one's doing that. So we have to be able to lead. And in order to be able to lead, you've got to get rid of all of that internal stuff that's blocking you.
Completely. And I think it's, you know, when I think about female founders and I think about, and like you say, it's the procrastination and the visibility and getting yourself out there and all the fears that sit. But I think so often as women that, and I put myself in this category as well, and I've done it so many times, but I have tools to basically give myself a kick up the backside when I need a kick up the backside. But is that we show up with an apology. You know, we show up with I'm just here, and just if you want to watch me, and this is what I might be doing, and here's my wee business, and I might just, you know, and you just think there is no man out there who is deciding to have a business that is showing up in that way. And I can't remember who put it on social media, and I can't remember where I saw it. If I do find it before this podcast comes out, I'll make sure I credit it. But they basically were talking about the no like trust factor, and we all talk about the no like trust factor. And she was basically saying there is no man out there that is caring who likes him. They want everyone to know them and trust him because he knows that's how to sell his business. But he's not giving two hoots who likes him. But we're all out there saying, no, like, I need to get the no like trust factor. I need people to like me. I need to like. And we focus on that too much. I understand the marketing premise behind it. I am a marketeer. I totally get it. And obviously that's how I would work with clients. But we as women put so much importance on being liked and worrying about what people are going to think of us and the judgment. And it's because we have always been judged by our looks, by being a mother, by all the, you know, what size we are, you know, don't do this, don't be loud, don't be too loud, be confident, but oh, don't, you know, just stay in the little space and all of those things. So it's that piece as women. I just think that apology that we show up in is, and the greatest transformations I've seen this year are the female business owners are just showing up.
Yeah, definitely. I love what you said there about, like, we do show up, like, we apologize, don't we? Like, we downplay it, like, oh, I'm just doing this little thing over here, or I'm just doing this little business on the side. It's like, no, like,
no, it's huge. We're showing up every day for our businesses, for our families, for ourselves, for our partners. We're doing the damn thing, you know. It's like they say about, like, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. She did the same dance with him backwards and in heels.
Yeah.
We're doing it, you know, but we have to. It's not like you said, nobody else is coming to do this for us. We have to do it for ourselves. We can't blame other people for how we are showing up. That's to change. We have to be the change. We can't just like, well, I can't show up because they're, you know, that's the way it is. That's the way society is. That's what, well, no, change, be it, do it, be brave, be bold. Like you said, big, bold action. So when you're working with clients, how do you work with them? How do you take them through their transformations? What is it that you do specifically for them?
So it's a mixture of different things, really depending on what the client needs, because sometimes people need the internal work. Like we've talked a lot about having mental and emotional blocks today. Sometimes clients need that, but sometimes they actually don't. They just need to work on plugging the gaps. So it very much is bespoke what I do. So, for example, I have a signature 6-month program where I work with my clients, but it's completely bespoke. So it's not an off the shelf product. And I use behavioural assessment. So I have a science backed approach, which means that we can really get to understand the person. So I understand my client on a deep level, better than they ever know themselves, probably. What that does is it speeds up the whole thing, because we're not spending hours and hours in discovery work trying to work out, like, okay, so what is it holding you back? How's this problem presenting itself? Like, we can go right to the core. We can understand what exactly they need to work on. And I very much focus on plugging the gaps. So we plug gaps in your mindset and emotional intelligence, and in your strategy, and also in productivity as well. So it's very much looking at like where you are now. So taking where you are right now, where you want to get to, and literally closing those gaps in the shortest and easiest route possible. So I don't want to be working with clients any longer than I need to, so I don't drag it out. But also change does take a little bit of time as well. So for the clients who are ready to go all in for 6 months, that's a really good amount of time to see change and a transformation take place. And that's where I come in and do something a lot different to a lot of other coaches, is in the sense that I have that science-backed approach.
Yeah.
And we use technology. Like, it's not just guesswork, we use technology. But then there are also other opportunities. So, for example, like I do accountability pods, which are really, really effective. So this is a very light touch group space, but it means that people are getting accountability to stay on track with their goals. Which is so important,
So
because
important.
like I've worked with people before who have had tasks set on their to-do list for over a year.
Yeah.
Because they've put it off for whatever reason. And then we come and work together, and they're just systematically working through stuff, and they're getting these big things.
It's that thing with to-do lists and tasks and things as well. It's like you need to treat it like a project. You need to treat it like something you're going to be done. And if it's on your list for that long, you either need to do it because it's that important. But if it's been on, is it really that important? Do you just not need to get it off or revisit it? Perhaps the idea behind it is still important, but the way you've wrote it down on your to-do list is never going to be achievable or be done because you've wrote something big rather than one step towards that goal. And I see it so often with people. And accountability for me in 2024 with my membership and my clients has been the biggest difference of people just getting stuff done.
I always say to people, the very, very minimum thing, if you just do anything, just get some accountability. It could be with a friend, another person in business, a group like yourself with a membership. It doesn't matter, but that is the most simplest and easiest thing that you can do. The important thing with accountability, though, is whoever you choose to keep you accountable can't let you off the hook.
No.
Because sometimes people will hook up with a friend, but there isn't really any accountability, because they might say what they're going to do, but it's not really like there's no sort of like urgency or check-in. So for the accountability to work, there's got to be a system and a process behind it, so it keeps you on track. And honestly, the things that people can achieve just by having a process to follow and a system where they go, right, I'm doing this and this is ticket, I can get this ticked off. So
Yeah.
like I say, there's everything from having accountability right up to working with someone for 6 months and everything in between. That's how I kind of like to work.
That's brilliant. And it's really good to have that approach, because I think too often with cookie cutter approaches, that you just don't see the results because it's not about the individual. You can't, you don't know what the individual problem is. And it's too hard to have this general suite of what could be wrong or what could that person need. So I think having that bespoke element to whatever you do, it's really, really important to know the individuals. And even within my membership, it's so important that I know them as individuals so that I can tailor. Obviously, it's still a membership, so it's not high touch, but it's still the element of this is where your businesses are at and here's how I'm going to try and help today. And as I say, the accountability has been a huge part of that. I absolutely love that. So, as you know, there is 3 questions that I ask everybody that comes on the podcast, that I ask them to think about beforehand and have a little bit of preparation for. And we are going to start with your joy spotlight, which is a favourite thing that has shaped your life, business, or work.
So this is actually what I was talking about earlier in the introduction. Going along to that webinar where the mentor was talking about how the mind works. Like, it's one of those cases, and it's got a name, this has, and I can't remember what it's called, but you know, when you turn up to something and it shapes the rest of your life. I think there's a film about it.
Sliding doors.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like a sliding doors moment. So if
Yeah.
I hadn't have gone to that webinar, like, my life would not be where it is now. It's one of
Yeah.
those situations. So it just was such a pivot. I can't even say that word. Pivotal change in my life that kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting it, but it really was such a big moment. And I think for me, the reason why it was such a big moment was because it really made me understand and see that I actually could change my life. And before that, I had no idea that I could do that. It just wasn't even on my radar. But that was the time when I was like, yeah, actually, do you know what? I have the ability to take responsibility, and I can change my life, and I can do things better. I can do things differently. So yeah, that was a big moment.
What was it that made you go to that webinar masterclass? What was different about that one?
Do you know, I can't even remember. I just remember it being part of the company I was with, the network marketing company.
Okay.
I think every single month they just had different guest experts coming in. And this particular one, I was like, well, that sounds interesting. I'm going to go along to that. So it was just a case of, right, they organised the training. There was nothing else apart from that. But it could have easily been a case where I didn't go along to it.
Yeah.
Very easily. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of think back and think, well, what would life have be like now if I hadn't
If you hadn't done that. And what was it about that training? I do think you touched on it earlier in the thing, but what was it about that stood out to you and spoke to you and resonated with you at that point?
I think the key message was, he was talking about the results that we get today are a direct correlation to the way that we think, feel, and behave. But that is attributed to events in the past. So we think, feel, and behave today based on who we were. Our basis of our personality is formed by the age of 7. So everything that happens in our life pre-age 7 is kind of locked in this box, and that shapes who we are for the rest of our life.
That's a bit scary, isn't it?
And then events and circumstances get layered and layered on top of that. So any thoughts and beliefs that were formed pre-age 7 get further reinforced as we get older, because events like layer on top of them.
I don't even think I can remember being 7.
No, and you can't consciously, you see.
No.
But everything is stored in your unconscious mind. So all of this is what he was talking about in this webinar. And I was just like, whoa, like, not only had I never even heard of this stuff before, but it made sense, because there was a lot that I experienced pre-age 7, and then subsequently lots of things afterwards. And I was like, whoa, okay, so this could be the reason why things have happened throughout the rest of my life. And what if I can go back to those events in the past? What if I can change the way I feel about them? What if I can take the emotional connection away from them so they don't impact me? So that's what kind of really stood out to me. And then from that moment on, I became fascinated by how the mind works, neuroscience, human behavior. It was just like, wow, this is so amazing.
Isn't it amazing, the moments in our lives that, like you say, that sliding door moment of you just had no idea that was coming when you sat down to that on that day to watch that was going to have this impact and change the trajectory of your life. And that's what also makes life really, really exciting. So the second thing I ask is inspired by joy. So that is someone or a book or something like that has been completely inspirational for you.
So I was quite inspired by Stephen Bartlett's book, Diary of the CEO. Now, I know probably lots of people listening to this have read that also, but the biggest thing I took away from that book was about how you treat people and creating a culture.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I work for myself, like I haven't got a team, so I haven't got a team culture to create, but I took what he was saying in that book and thought about how can I create a positive culture with my clients? How can I create a positive culture with my audience? And it was all about like putting people first and thinking about, again, it's about creating an impact, but how could I do better? How can I create a really great environment where they can succeed, like going above and beyond?
That's it. And I am obsessed with the Diary of the CEO podcast. I actually have listened to every single episode apart from the last few weeks. I'm a bit funny with podcasts. I probably shouldn't admit this on my podcast, but if somebody says to me, go and listen to this podcast, I need to go right back to the start and listen to them in order. Somebody would tell me something that's about my mind or my behavior, or there's some kind of analytical thing there, but that's what I have to do. So when I started listening to Diary of a CEO just over a year ago, I went right back to the start, and I've now listened to every single one. So yeah, that's how obsessive I can be about things. And I love when he talks about culture, and I love when he brings on people who talk about culture. And part of the reason I created the Joy Work Club was because after I started that community 2 months after starting the business. And the reason I did is, and I think I'm going to repeat this on this podcast quite a lot, it seems, I thought I was a lone wolf, completely introverted, very happy in my own space, could always show, like I've always had to speak publicly. I've always had to get up in front of groups of people. That was my job. That was a big part of my job. But because it was my job, I could do it. Personally, put me in a party atmosphere and I would quite happily just sit in the same chair for the whole party, not move. That's who I am. So, but what I realized very quickly after those first 2 months was that actually I did thrive amongst people and my team and my people. And what I had created over my 20 plus year career was people that stayed with me for a very, very long time in an industry that had a high turnover of staff. And I realized this team of people would come with me because of the culture that I was able to create. So, like you, I was like, well, I'm not going to have a team anytime soon. That is part of my big, big dream. Like when you say the impact, the big dream, my big, big dream is I want a team. I want, which has taken me quite a long time to realize that I did, because I felt like I was running as far away from that as I possibly could.
Yeah.
But I realized that that is in my future. But I wanted to create this space of this culture of two people to show up and feel supported and feel part of something. And it's so important. And we see so many businesses, both small, big, medium sized, doesn't matter the size, who are just not putting people at the heart of it. And it is a mistake I see again and again and again. And people are your customers, your clients, your team. All of those people are as important as each other, and every single one of them should be at the heart of the business. And if it isn't, you're going to come unstuck at some point. And people think culture is a pool table or a TV or free drinks, and that's important. That's part of you making the culture. But if the rest of it stinks, then and you're not looking after your staff, and your staff don't feel heard, listened to, and appreciated, you can forget how many toys you throw at them.
Well, this is it. And it's all about how people feel. And it's creating an environment where people can succeed. And part of being a leader is that you cultivate that environment. Like you, first of all, you lead by example, but you allow others to grow. You allow others to succeed and flourish if that's what they want to do.
Exactly.
I was having a conversation with someone this morning at a networking event, and she was telling me about an organization that she'd gone into recently, and there were like different pools of people in different teams, but she was saying that everybody at a certain level just kind of gravitated to each other, and they didn't like they didn't like to sort of socialize with anybody that was sort of higher level. And I was like, but that keeps you playing small because you're only surrounding yourself with people at a certain level. But that had to be driven from the top. The people at the top are allowing this segregation, where, the people that are maybe the customer service advisors can't be around the managers, and the managers can't get to the CEOs. And it's kind of like, but why is there so much separation?
Yeah.
And it's like they weren't like that. It's almost like they each had a bubble, and somebody else can get into that bubble if they were deemed to be at a higher level than them. And it was just like such a strange culture, because it's like a them and an us mentality, isn't it?
But so many businesses have it. And then you're like, but if you have a them and an us, how do people grow? How do they develop? How do they stay with your company because they see
Yeah.
a path of development? And this isn't about people asking for more money or people wanting seniority. This is about people wanting to fulfill ambitions and desires and dreams. And the majority of the people are really loyal. And if you look after them, they will stay with you, whether somebody's offering them more money because they see the path and the fulfillment they could have with you. And when I see businesses and I hear stories like that where they're getting it wrong, it just upsets me so much because there's so much untapped potential. Just like there's so much untapped potential, the amount of mothers that are leaving the corporate space, and not necessarily because they all want to. Some people love working in the corporate space. They want to be part of something bigger. That's where they thrive. They don't want to go out and do it on their own. But so many females are being pushed to do it because they literally can't make it work. Whereas if they saw flexible working and looking after people, and they'll get so much more productivity, so much more efficiency, and a happier workforce. And a happier workforce makes more money, basically.
Well, this is it. And I think, the businesses that struggle are always going to be those that can't adapt and can't change and that don't create that culture and don't create it from the ground up. Like they haven't got those solid foundations. So it's like, well, it's one way, it's our way, or that's it kind of thing. And they're not willing to adapt. But like you touched on, people will be loyal, people will stay if they feel safe, if they feel secure, if they feel like they're getting their needs met. As soon as their needs aren't met, what they're going to do, they start looking elsewhere.
And people
It's as
always
simple.
presume it's money. People
Yes.
always presume, or they just want more money. Don't they understand we're a growing business? We can't. It's not always money.
No, not at all.
You know,
People like obviously we all want to be rewarded for the work that we do financially, but it does, peace of mind and happiness and fulfillment goes way beyond money. Like money really is just a vehicle to get you to the things that you want in life. But having that safety, security, happiness, fulfillment, that's what people really want.
100%.
So yeah, I that's what really stood out for me in that book was like, I just wish that every single business owner on the planet, whatever, regardless of the size of the business, would read that book and really take that on board and learn from that. Because I think,
But is that the key word there is learning? As a leader, as a business owner, you have to keep learning and you have to admit when you got it wrong. And I
yeah,
think even Stephen Bartlett mentions that like he had a slide in one of his offices and he thought that was him creating culture, and he realized that now that was completely stupid and that wasn't going to create the culture that he wanted. So it's that ability to say, oh, I didn't quite get that right, so let's try again. The same as to have success, you need to try and try again. It's exactly the same with that. Okay, talk to people, find out, how are you feeling? What could I do better? But also educate them. So if it's something that they want that the company really can't do at that time, explain why. Have open communication and open discourse about the business and where it's going and what the mission and the vision is. And when you have those values and everyone knows what the values are, everybody will feel together and part of something and working towards something. And that's when businesses have the greatest growth, when they have a team who are together and going towards that common goal. The minute you lose sight of that is a scary, scary path.
definitely.
Wonderful. So, and then it's the joy killer, the one thing that you would like to see removed and banned from the world.
Do you know what? Like, I obviously spend a lot of time online. Like, I'm an online business owner. And the thing that really bothers me is the nastiness. Now, I haven't experienced this personally, but I've obviously seen it because there's so much hate out there in the world. And I think that because it's online, people feel like they can show up and treat people however they want, whether it's another business owner or a celebrity, whoever it is, it really doesn't matter. Like, I just hate this whole hate culture, and people can just say whatever they want. And it's horrible stuff. Like, it's
Yeah,
really mean. And I think the more famous and the bigger you get, the worse it seems to be. It's like a green light for people to just like vomit like their whole thoughts on somebody. And it's just
yeah,
awful. So I just wish that, particularly with social media, that there was some way of like every time a nasty comment was written, that there could be a bot that just goes, right, this isn't nice, we delete
Get
it.
rid of
Like,
it.
so people just know there's no point in even saying anything because it's not going to have an impact. It's not going anywhere. And I honestly think the world would be a much nicer, happier place. Like, I know that, again, it's not about being happy all the time. It's not unicorns and rainbows. People will still have their thoughts, but it's not going to ruin someone's life because they're not being subjected to this level of hate every time they...
I don't really understand. I don't really understand the energy waste
I know.
in commenting about things. And don't get me wrong, there is things I see on social media that rile me
Yes.
to the point that
Yes.
you'd want to be like, oh, because you want to try and change the opinion, or you want to try and change the way that they're thinking and see a different way. But you just can't get involved because it is just bile and it is just vitriol hate. And if it definitely is one of the more serious things that does need to be addressed. And I know there's government legislation looking at it and social media as a whole, but it's just so, and it's silly because it now becomes humorous. Like if somebody says to me, oh, I've got a troll, you're like, oh, you've made it. You've made it. If you've got somebody trolling you. And when did that become a thing that we joked about? No, but we know that the more we put our heads above the parapet, we're open ourselves up for that discourse coming in our way, for that way that people could start to have comments. And we all have that fear on social media. We will say to all of our clients, don't worry about what, Susan you went to school with is worried about type conversation, because you're doing what you're doing and she's doing what she's doing. But it's not that we need to worry about. It's the people that are going to come and say those hateful things. And it is terrifying, but I try and reframe it that you don't know what they're going through. And to put those things out there, they must be in a pretty bad place themselves. But I don't get the waste of energy. I don't get, if you don't like what somebody's doing, move on. Like, we're all have little comments with our best friends about something we don't like, and there's probably something we would say and be like, wish I hadn't said that, I didn't mean that. But you don't put it out there, and you don't put it out to the person. But then I also say, if you wouldn't say it to the person's face, don't say it at all.
No, and this is my thing with the online space. I think people feel that they can say it because there's no repercussion, is there? Like, you can say what you want and hide behind it. We've heard of like keyboard warriors. And I think it's very different, showing up and having an opinion and having an educated discussion. That is absolutely fine. Every single person on the planet is different. So we're all going to have different beliefs, different attitudes, a different view of the world. That's okay. And I like to welcome like open discussions. But it's really when people are like, when someone's like commenting on the way someone looks, for example, like that kind of level of trolling, it's just, they're the kind of things that I wish we could clamp down on, because I think it's just so harmful and so toxic. And like you say, where do people get this energy, and how must the person be feeling in their own life to project that level of like hatred, onto somebody else? Like,
honestly, it's the one thing that no matter how I go around it, I cannot see their point of view. I cannot see their point of view. There's sometimes I see comments and I think that's a bit close to the bone, that one, but it can just be an opinion that maybe I think is close to the bone, that is just that conversation. And yes, it probably would be something they would say to somebody having a conversation in the pub. But also it's then that leaving it there once you've had your say. That's it, you've shared your opinion. You don't, not everyone needs to share it, but the level of hate is just beyond me, just completely beyond, and I don't understand why anybody would want to put that out into the world. I don't want. So yeah, it can absolutely get in bin because there is no gain for anybody in that space.
No, there really isn't. So yes, I would love to see that change. I'm not sure it's going to be something that happens anytime particularly soon.
No, I don't think so.
But yeah, that will be definitely one thing I'd love to get rid of.
Yeah, but if there's any tip for anybody out there, if there's anybody that's upsetting your timelines anywhere on any platform you are, block.
100%. Like,
get them gone.
And I think if anyone triggers you in any way, like especially online, it's just, do what you need to do to give you peace of mind. If you need to just temporarily, like put them on mute or whatever it is, it's fine. Like it doesn't mean anything like, bad
It's a
on
shop
your part.
window. If you don't
Yes.
want to go to that shop today, it's okay.
Yes, it's absolutely fine. You're a grown adult, you can make decisions, and if you're feeling a certain way or you're triggered, get curious about where that trigger's coming from, what's causing it, and then do something about it. Like, it's fine. Yeah.
I love that. Absolutely love that. So, Nikki, if people do want to know more about you, come and find you, come and work with you, have a chat with you, everything in between, where do they come?
So I am on a couple of spaces online. So I'm on Instagram, and you can find me at Nikki Masson Global on Instagram. I am on and off with LinkedIn because I find it's like I either love it or I don't like it. I'm like, I just can't get my consistency going, but I am there. So I'm Nikki Masson. You can also connect with me on my personal profile if you want. So to be honest, social media is the best place for us to connect initially. If you want to have a chat with me more, my DMs are always open, so you're welcome to jump in there, or just follow me for a little bit, see if you get the right vibe, and then we can always chat about different things that I've got going on. But it'd be lovely to connect.
Lovely. I will put all the links in the show notes when this episode is aired, so people can just go down and click and come and find you and join your journey. Thank you so much. But before I let you go, there is one question I ask everybody, and that is, what joy do you want to leave behind?
Well, that's a big question. The joy that I want to leave behind is I would love for everybody to believe that they can live life on their terms, that they can have the happiness, the fulfillment, the joy, the energy that they want. Like, it's possible for them to have it. And if I can just install in people that it's possible, then I believe that I've done my job.
Absolutely. Absolutely love that. And from what I can see from here, it is certainly you're on the path to world domination of it. That big, bold dream, you go for it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have really enjoyed our conversations, as I know our listeners will of too.
Yeah, thank you so much again. It's been lovely to be here.
Thanks, Nikki. That was such a great conversation with Nikki. And if you're anything like me, you're leaving this episode feeling inspired and ready to take bold steps in your business and life. For me, there are 3 key takeaways. 1, resilience is your superpower. Whether it's navigating motherhood, business challenges, or personal growth, building resilience helps you move forward even when things get tough. And the more recordings I do of this podcast, the more that word resilience keeps coming up as a way to keep looking and striving for that success and building the life that you want through having the resiliency to do so. 2, community matters. Having a support network of like-minded individuals can make all of the difference in cutting through the noise of online culture, the noise of building a business, and staying focused on what truly matters. Number 3, growth starts with you. Personal development and self-awareness are essential for building a sustainable, impactful business that aligns with your values and vision. It is so important to keep working on ourselves as individuals and people and humans than it is to keep working on our business. If you love today's episode, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with someone who could use a dose of joy and inspiration. The more the word of this podcast spread, the more I can do within the podcast. And if you're craving more connection and community, don't forget to join us in the Joy Work Club community. We would love to see you there. It's the perfect space to connect with fellow entrepreneurs and embrace collaboration over competition. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on the Joy Work Show. Until then, keep finding joy in the journey. See you later.